Let me say this to you. With all these park ranger stories running around out here, I'm just going to be honest with you. They're not telling you the truth. First of all, they never delegate and tell you which organization they work for. For example, there are park rangers that work for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Then there's park rangers that work for the Department of the Army. Then there are others that work for the National Park Services. Then there's park rangers that work for the National Department of U.S. Interior. I've listened to a lot of park ranger stories, and me being a member of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and a real park ranger, listening to this stuff, it's all bullshit and crap. And I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm tired of it. I'm sick and tired of people making up stories about monsters that they never saw. And I want to be clear with you. I'm not saying that they don't exist, because yes, they do exist, but these people have never saw them. Now, let me say this to you. As a member of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, working as a park ranger, my job is to travel. And I have traveled to probably more state parks and national forests than anybody in this organization. And I will say this to you about state parks and national forests. They are very, very dangerous places. And I don't want you to get it misconstrued. I'm not calling them dangerous because of the native species that live there, whether it be mountain lions or bears or rattlesnakes or moccasins in Louisiana or alligators or crocodiles down in Florida. I'm talking about the dangers that no one else will explain to you. And this story that I'm about to share with you is about one such danger. Now, I'm not going to disclose what park location this happened in, but I will disclose details to you so you will understand if you find yourself in the woods and you run across this, that the best option for you is to flee. When I tell you to flee, I mean run like you just broke out of prison, and keep running and keep running and keep running. Don't look back. Don't try and reason with what you saw. Don't do anything but run, because there is no option other than escaping or dying. Now, let me paint the scene for you and tell you how I found out about this particular monster. I'm in Arizona 2 years ago. The problem with the migrant crisis has already spun out of control. It just hit the news recently how bad it is, but back then it was already out of control. And I'm being called in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is being called in to consult on this plan coming from Washington, D.C. to house these migrants inside of our national parks and forests. Why? Because if you stuffed them there, the U.S. citizens would not know that they were there. Out of sight, out of mind. Well, I come in town, heading to the office, we have the meeting. We're sitting there talking about this proposed plan to build temporary housing for them inside of the park. The meeting is going extremely well until one of the National Park Service rangers says, listen, I understand why this is being done. I understand what's being proposed to be done, but I think this is a terrible idea, especially at this location. He proceeds to say that there are things that come from beneath the earth and they hunt deer and other game in this particular area. Listen to me. He wouldn't go into vast details of what these things were, but he just said they were extremely dangerous. And in his professional opinion, it was a terrible, terrible idea. Fast forward about an hour later, they decide that they're going to approve the scope of work and that we're going to go out there and start doing estimates. So it's me as a park ranger from the U.S. Corps of Engineers, him as a park ranger from the National Forest Services, and another gentleman who was a park ranger from the U.S. Army Division of Justice. He leads us to the site location, and as we are on our way to this site location, I'm talking about there's nothing but deer carcasses everywhere. Deers hung up in trees. Deer skins hung up in trees. I'm telling you, it was spooky, like we went to a location where cannibals lived and thrived. Now, as we're walking along, asking him questions, he says, now you see why I said this is the wrong location. So now I'm asking him questions about what is doing this, what could be doing this. He looks at me and says, there are some things that's just too hard to explain. You have to see them for yourself. And the more time we spend in this area, believe me, you will see them for yourself. So we proceed along and get directly to the site. And let me say this to you. The site itself would have been perfect. It was on a small plateau close to fresh, clean water. It would have been super easy to cut in an access road right to this location. It really was the perfect site to build a temporary migrant shelter. Combine that with the fact that the location basically was well hidden. I mean, it achieved each and every goal and objective. Imagine the scene. We've been on location for about 20 minutes, discussing everything. And I'm looking at it, trying to figure out the orientation of how we would actually seat the facility. And by seat, I mean where we would set things up. When you start to hear the shrieking coming from up above the plateau in these trees. Now, initially it sounded like some type of bird shrieking and screeching. Then it gets louder, but this one is coming from the west. Then we hear the screeching from the east. And soon come to realize that nope, these are not birds. This is something communicating at far distances. Now get this, 5 minutes after that, you start to hear what sounds like something climbing up the trees, like claws gripping the trees. Then after that, you start to hear things jumping from tree to tree while witnessing the trees shaking. So now both of us are looking at the Park Service rangers and saying, what the fuck is going on? He says, now see, this is what I was telling y'all about in the meeting. I don't think that they will attack us, but I'm not sure, so I suggest we get the hell out of here. Now listen, I'm gonna pause right here and I'm gonna pay the proper honor and respect to Connor. Connor was a guy who was a park ranger for the U.S. Army. As all of this is going on, and it's quite a bit of commotion going on, Connor draws his weapon, looks at us, and says, well, guys, we do have weapons on us. There's no need for us to be afraid. If something comes from these trees, we're just going to kill it. And we're going to drag it back, and we're going to see what it is. It was almost like in that moment, Connor broke through the layer of fear. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but for me, that's what he did. We did have weapons on us. There was no need to truly be afraid, so we finished doing our job. But as we were doing our job, these things were making the loudest noises and racket you would ever heard, screeching, screaming, shaking trees, all kinds of foolishness. Then Connor saw one of them. And I need you to understand something. I didn't see it, but he did. And after seeing this, his whole demeanor changed about what we should and shouldn't be doing. Because he walks over to us, he says, listen, we're going to need to get out of here, and we're going to need to get out of here quickly. There's no way in hell we can put any human being in this location. No way. Then he starts to walk away, leaving us standing there. Now here we go, get this. We leave that location, get back to our vehicles. And when we get back to our vehicles, Connor describes exactly what he saw. He said it was a pale, skinny, humanoid creature, legs longer than their arms, way longer, with heads that were turned upside down, where the chin was where the forehead should be, and the forehead was where the chin should be. But everything else was in proportion. He said their eyes was where a human's mouth was, and their mouth is where a human's eyes were. He said they were naked, skinny, emaciated, and you could see these green veins running through their entire bodies. Fast forward about 35 days later, we have another meeting. We give our official recommendation based on the site, based on the location, based on the environment. This is not suitable for any human being. And guess what they did? They approved it and they started building it anyway. Listen to me. 2 weeks after the temporary facility was built, they shipped people into there. And then a week later, they were forced to shut it down. Now, I don't have the direct proof as to what went on there. Now, listen, I'm not going to make a definitive statement as to what actually went on there. Because to make a definitive statement in my job position means that I'm disclosing something to you. But what I will say to you is this. I have heard rumors from people in high places that heard rumors from other people that went to the site that 15 human beings were taken and eaten. Not just taken, they were eaten